It's midterm Monday, and GOP voters in 4 key states, Indiana, West Virginia, North Carolina, and Ohio, are heading to the polls tomorrow for primaries as the Republicans try to hold on to their majorities in Congress. Joining me now, Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor and editor of Halftime Report. It was just 6 days ago that Fox News hosted a debate in West Virginia for the Republicans who are vying to take on Joe Manchin, the Democratic incumbent senator. And tell me about what's happened since then, because all of a sudden this morning we get a tweet from President Trump that says, "To the great people of West Virginia, we have together a really great chance to keep making a big difference. Problem is, Don Blankenship, currently running for Senate, can't win the general election in your state. No way. Remember Alabama. Vote Representative Jenkins or Attorney General Morrissey!" Exclamation point. So he weighed in.
He half-weighed in. He said, and I was caused to think about what people like Mitt Romney and so many others did with Trump in 2016 when they said, whatever you do, don't vote for this guy. And they said, well, for whom should we vote? And he said, well, I don't care, just not him. And you know how that worked out. If the president was really serious about wanting to stop Blankenship, probably should have picked, right? Probably should have said, but he knew he didn't want to pick because both of the other two were flawed in their own ways. Jenkins is probably a better general election candidate, I guess, than Morrissey is, but he is also a more establishmentarian figure, which would upset folks. And then on the other hand, Morrissey looks like he would have a tougher poll than Jenkins against Manchin, and it's a difficult choice, so he chose not to choose. As a consequence, Blankenship probably is helped in the sense that if the support drives off in both directions and Blankenship can keep his solid core, then maybe he can still pull it off.
And then what, if the president says, remember Alabama, and certainly Blankenship might remember Alabama, and that Roy Moore was expected not to be able to win that primary, or the president said that he wanted him not to, but he did anyway. And then the president, in a controversial move that we've all talked about for a long time, endorses Roy Moore, and Roy Moore ends up losing. So the president could change his mind, and perhaps people that support Blankenship, who want somebody just different to go in there and fire up Washington, maybe they're realizing that the president will come around if he has to.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure that if they nominated Blankenship, that the Republican look, if the Republicans could get behind somebody who was credibly accused on multiple occasions of sexual misconduct towards teenage girls, I assume that they could find it within themselves to come around for a fellow who was convicted of white-collar crimes, though they were connected ultimately to a very tragic incident. I suspect if they can come around for Roy Moore, they could come around for Blankenship. The other thing here is this is an unfair comparison. Blankenship is not Roy Moore.
Right.
Roy Moore couldn't win, as it would turn out, the Alabama general election. There is no reason to think that Don Blankenship would do substantially worse than either of the other two. In fact, I don't think either of the other two have made a conclusive case that they are the best nominee for the general election. I think the White House here is probably overcooking the broth a little bit, might have been better off just to let this one play out on its own.
And then take us over to North Carolina. I want to read you a quote from Steve Bannon, one of our old friends. He's in Politico today saying about the midterm elections, "You've got to make it an up or down vote November 6th. I want Trump on the ticket in every district. You have to put Donald Trump on the ticket. You're not voting for Congress, you're voting for Donald Trump." This is something that usually presidents in their first midterms try to distance themselves and say this is not a referendum on the president, this is a referendum on Congress. But Bannon is suggesting is the exact opposite of that. Good strategy or no?
Yeah, I assume that comments like that are why Steve Bannon is making that phone call from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the political wilderness. You cannot have Donald Trump be the deciding issue in every race. Now, there are some districts where absolutely Republicans want to make it about Trump. If you're in West Virginia, where the president probably has a 70% job approval rating, absolutely you want it to be a referendum on Trump. But in a lot of the districts, particularly the dozens of districts where the president is not particularly popular and Republicans are fighting control of the House, they want to talk about tax cuts. They want to talk about issues. They want to talk about those things. They don't want it to be a referendum on Trump, because if it becomes a referendum on Trump, what the Democrats are immediately able to say is, send me to Washington so that I can put a check on this runaway presidency. It has worked in many cycles in the past. It would work again for them this time. They have to pick and choose where you use the president and where you keep him at a distance.
So we've talked about West Virginia, Indiana, and Ohio the past couple of weeks. We haven't really talked about North Carolina and the 9th congressional district. What's happening there, and are Republicans in danger of possibly having another sort of Connor Lamb moment down there?
It's possible. What is remarkable about this primary, you have an incumbent Republican U.S. member of Congress, very, very conservative people down there. Not those people, but some other people are very conservative. Robert Pittenger is a very conservative member of Congress. You would never think that he would get out-conservatived. But what's happening down there is a vicious primary where you could end up with an incumbent U.S. member of Congress, member of the United States Congress, get knocked out over who loves Donald Trump the most. So that's the kind of district, in fact, where Steve Bannon's quite right. That's where you want to be the Trumpiest Trumper of all the Trumps.
But is that true in the general election as well? I mean, I know that it's true in the primary.
In that district, probably yes. I think in Pittenger's district, I don't think you can probably be too Republican.
All right. All right. That's good to know. All right. Chris Stirewalt, thank you.
You bet.